Yep, I'm super engaged today.
Alright, get ready.
Yep.
Here comes our exciting thing.
I could use some more volume here.
Good afternoon and welcome to Smackdown. Today is Sunday, the 16th of June for 2019, and I thought I would open the show with a little quote to get us on the road to the topic we have for today. Here's my little quote. Our fathers were our models for God. If our fathers bailed, what does that tell you about God? You have to consider the possibility that God does not like you. He never wanted you. In all probability, he hates you. This is not the worst thing that can happen.
That's a quote from Frozen. Just before they break into song.
Yes, it's a quote from Frozen, the one where they're sitting on a ski lift for 90 minutes.
Oh, that one too. Okay.
An excellent quote about fathers and bailing on responsibility, at least as far as I'm concerned. That was Chuck Palahniuk for Fight Club, and that was pretty much the tone that film sets for why those characters are so messed up. It's because their dads abandoned them. Which means
I think they have a long litany of excuses to be messed up.
Yeah, those guys, they had it going on. I still like the fact that you can look back at Fight Club and every time Edward Norton says, I did this thing, Tyler Durden goes, yeah, me too. every time. Like, my dad abandoned us and he's got other families. It's like he was starting franchises. Oh, yeah, me too.
But they're fantasy fighter with two different people. One wants Abe Lincoln because it has reach, and the other wants to fight William Shatner.
That's true. Those are, what is it, was it skinny guys fight till they're hamburger? It's been a while for me. I don't remember it entirely. So our topic for today is movies about absent fathers for various reasons, which is to say abandonment, death, general disinterest. You and I came up with this topic yesterday because you brought up a filmmaker whose entire career seems to be based around the idea of father abandonment.
Yeah, I was inspired because there was, a while back, an entire film festival of Wes Anderson films called Bad Dads, which, once you see the poster, you kind of realize it's like, oh yeah, this is sort of an overarching theme of his career, where a lot of them are... The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou and Fantastic Mr. Fox and Royal Tenenbaums, they all have central figures that are unfit fathers or absent, right, or just doing a very poor job of reconciling with their own children.
Well, even what's the high school movie called?
Oh, Rushmore?
There we go. I couldn't draw it out. Is he a kid with a single mom?
That one I have not seen in so long. I forget the details. So.
I think he's and talk about an overachiever.
Rushmore I remember more for the trailer I saw for it than when I actually saw the film, because the trailer was one of those ones that go on and on and on. It was a very long trailer. It was at least 5 minutes, which is interminable for a trailer. And at the end of it, I realized I have no idea what this film is about. And that can be an either good sign for a film or a terrible sign. Mm-hmm. And it usually means that, this film is full of complex themes that the ad people do not know how to cut a trailer for it.
Oh, it's funny that you say that.
When you started with Fight Club, that's another film that had like a long trailer that I got to the end of it and said, I don't know what this film is about, but I guess I'll go see it because it's a new David Fincher film.
I liked the PSAs that did for Fight Club.
Yeah, well...
Those 30-second...
I remember them from the DVD. I certainly did not see them in any other context.
I don't remember if they actually aired anywhere. I know that they existed. I feel like I might have seen the Edward Norton one where he talked... No, you're right. That's the one where he just talks about it like you're in an airplane. He's like, emergency exits can be found here and here. And remember, no one has the right to touch you in your bathing suit area.
Right.
I remember that one. And then Brad Pitt did the one about... Remember, in cases of emergency, urine is sterile. You can drink it. Mm-hmm. and then he just started laughing out of character.
Right. Well, also because it's factually incorrect. Urine is often not sterile.
God damn it, are you telling me that means that mixing gasoline with frozen concentrated orange juice will not produce napalm like Fight Club promised me?
Well, it'll create the bathtub gin variation of napalm.
Yeah, as I understand it, every single thing you see in the movie Fight Club is fake. Any information about bomb building, anything about chemicals, is completely made up. Because it was a $60 million, 4,000 theater film they thought was going to, change lives. And the last thing they wanted to do was put actual anarchist cookbook recipes out there. Whereas
if you're serious about that sort of thing at all, you can just download a copy of the anarchist cookbook and have at it.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say is that if you read the book Fight Club, those recipes, they're the real ones.
Yeah, well, Chuck does his research.
Chuck is a research workhorse, I think,
and he knows a lot of people who tell him weird stories about the things they've been up to.
I'll tease you now for maybe our next act break after the ad. I'm going to read another very short quote from Chuck Palahniuk from a different piece, which is even more appropriate than the one I read earlier about abandoned fathers. That's right, people. Get excited. Here comes another.
So it's a quote. It's a quote from that Broken English book, right?
Yeah, I'm not only
Pygmy?
will I not read from Pygmy, I will not even finish Pygmy. That was a rough novel. It was. But we were talking about Wes Anderson's films. Here's my journey with Wes Anderson. I saw Bottle Rocket and didn't care about it at all. Didn't like the characters. Found them annoying. Did not see any artistic merit in it. I will say that after I kind of saw a few Wes Anderson movies, I went back and watched it and started to see the glimmer of artistic integrity in it.
It's not a fully realized Wes Anderson film.
Right.
He's not quite there yet.
I later saw Rushmore, which, for my money, it's a movie that has 3 acts, but the whole third act doesn't work. Doesn't make a lick of sense, because the movie is about a conflict between these two characters, and in the third act, the conflict is arguably resolved, and we just sort of linger with them. I won't even say hang out. The movie just lingers and goes nowhere. I don't understand the last 30 or 40 minutes of the movie at all. I don't get what they're doing. I don't understand what he's trying to say. None of the character arcs matter to me.
So you're right there with the ad execs who cut together the trailer, because they didn't know what to do with it either.
So I take it you didn't see I was still seeing some commercials at that time on television. This is long enough ago. The ads for it on TV were these 10-second visual blips of some of the stage productions and key lines of dialogue, and then they would constantly cut to that song. I think it's called Making Time by Creation. I think that's the name of that song. This 60s tune, and they would blast that over the title. And they were tiny ads, but there were dozens of them. Just different ways of presenting the movie over and over and over, really trying to make it seem like the coolest movie ever.
Yeah, well, maybe I did, but those aren't the ones that registered with me. It was the one that I saw at the Imperial, and the trailer just wouldn't end, and still failed to convey anything about what the film was going to be about.
Right. Well, ultimately I saw, after that, I guess the next one would be the Tenenbaums.
Right, yeah.
And I don't think that movie is a masterpiece, but I think there's great stuff in it. I think it kind of overstays its welcome in spots, especially when you're watching it for a while, and it's kind of pleasant and lighthearted and sort of dark comedy, and then it becomes a dead serious suicide film for a while, which felt like it came from nowhere at the time I was watching it. I remember just thinking, this is heavy-handed, and it takes a little while for the movie to ramp back up again to its charming self. It gets there, but it takes a bit. So I remember thinking it was a bit uneven, but I liked it. But I was still not sold on Anderson until I saw Life Aquatic, which is so quirky that I know people who can't get through it. It's way...
Well, that is the one I especially love. I have really unconditional love for that particular film.
Yeah, I totally understand. I mean, it is the fully realized Wes Anderson movie for me. It's a little bit of everything. It's got a lot of character.
And it's an action-adventure film.
I still remember Bill Murray talking about that movie in its initial release, because he said at the time of the release, they were like, Bill, are you here to promote the movie? He goes, yeah. He did it in this exhausted voice. And he said, I've basically never had less fun making a movie because this film was so specific and arduous. It was just so much work. And he said, if it doesn't turn out to be a massive hit, I will be angry for the rest of my life. Something like that. He was really, you could tell, he was just, the film was over and he was just upset. They had just made him work too much.
Well, I don't know if it was a massive hit, but it was certainly a massive cult film.
Not even close. It wasn't a financial hit whatsoever.
Yeah, but I mean, among certain people, it is one of those cult films that permeates.
It has a lot of charm and a lot of magic in it. And but Bill Murray, it seemed he seemed to have that, as I've mentioned many times, he seemed to have that John Carpenter attitude of, if this doesn't make a boatload of money, I'm going to pretend it was terrible.
Well, maybe that's why he's only in about 2 minutes of the Darjeeling Limited.
Right. So yeah, moving on to Darjeeling Limited. I remember watching that movie and just being sucked into it. And there's a visual reveal in that movie, a really strange sequence where we revisit. It's near the end of the movie. We revisit all the major characters of the film in separate rooms all over the world. But the rooms are represented as rooms, sleeping
compartments of the train, yeah.
And it's this sort of magic. We're going compartment by compartment. The camera's panning from one to one to one. And there's one in particular in there that is... I saw this film in the cinema, and when they cut to the jungle one, my heart broke. It was so amazing. And I have since watched this on a tiny television and tried to explain to somebody the majesty of that moment, and it does not come across. Like, it is not the same moment it was when you had 100% of your attention following this scene, and they just suddenly cut to the jungle moment. It just really got me, and that is my favorite moment of any Wes Anderson film. That thing. That strange, completely out of left field moment.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't remember what follows Darjeeling, but I assume it's Fantastic Mr. Fox and then
I think that would,
movie.
And then the Hotel Budapest,
of course there's the Bruce Willis sketch.
Oh yes, Moonlight Kingdom.
I will say that Moonlight Kingdom is still cute. I still kind of like it. And then by the time Fantastic Mr. Fox came out, I was starting to tire of Wes Anderson and become annoyed with his precious way of telling stories. Much like how now when I see the name Tim Burton, I kind of shudder with, I'm going to have to sit through another awful post-good Tim Burton movie.
Wes Anderson has yet to do his Planet of the Apes, so...
For me, it's everything after Fantastic Mr. Fox. and I will say this, Isle of Dogs just infuriated me. Sitting through that movie just made me upset. It just didn't... I don't like that kind of animation. I don't like that kind of stilted dialogue. And just trying to get through it, I just got progressively angrier at him for wasting my time. And again, when you do great work, I kind of want to keep giving you chances. And with that, it's just, I'm retroactively disliking his earlier films now, and I'm trying to separate the man from these different parts. For instance, what's the hotel movie called?
It's I always get the order wrong, but it's the Grand Budapest Hotel or the Grand Hotel Budapest?
That's it.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, that was not a movie I enjoyed any of. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to argue it's badly made, badly acted, badly written. It just feels... The weirdest thing about Grand Budapest Hotel was I kept meeting... You meet people in the world and they're not movie people. You might meet, like, an elderly lady doing her groceries, and for no reason, they're just like, I just saw this movie, The Grand Budapest Hotel, and it really worked for me. And you're like, yeah, I can see why it worked for you and why I hate it so much. Because it's so cute and charming, but has 5 dirty words in it. Oh, those dirty word scenes. They took such liberties. It's like, ugh. There's just something about it. It's really turned for me. So Wes Anderson has become one of those directors I dread now. And speaking of things I dread, let's do a quick commercial break.
I guess it's bad news that I've booked him as our guest next week.
No, I'd be willing to talk to him if only to...
Don't worry, I'm sure he'll bail on me like all our other guests.
That's good. Let's air our dirty laundry on here.
Of course.
on your behind-the-scenes one. We have a nice long gap of no sound because I had the DJ booth. That's why you didn't hear anything there. It's just like me going, doesn't seem to be playing. Oh, button's off. We got 30 more seconds.
Art? We can pop that. Indie? We can pop that too. Dream, synth, chamber.
I just randomly chose a show from.
It's already pop.
The rest of us goes pop.
These are so strange.
Same awkward host, new concept and time. Tune in Tuesdays at 7 p.m.
Did you just say same
That's
awkward
awesome.
host?
All pop subgenres.
That's
Oh, it is.
awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. Yeah.
1690
That's kind of fun.
We're gonna have so many feelings.
I guess you just. I really like that. And we're back on CGL 1690. Our show is called Cinema Smackdown, and today, it being Father's Day, we're discussing, well, movies where fathers abandon their families. Because we have black hearts, I think, would be the...
And we're the right age to have grown up on Spielberg films, and that's all he ever made films about.
And that was one of the things I was going to bring up. I guess, are we out on Anderson? Did you want to talk anything about Wes Anderson? I mean, all I did was rant about how I don't like him anymore.
Yes, and I love him, and you can go straight to hell.
All right, so you're just fine with the Grand Budapest Hotel. You're just fine with Island Dogs.
I enjoy every single one of his films, including the shorts.
That just to me feels like really the Chateau, whatever it was. That was awful. That Natalie Portman, Jason.
Oh, yeah, okay, that one's not great, but no, I was thinking about the racing one.
That one goes along with Darjeeling, I think. The Chateau one.
That right. It's sort of a prequel to the events of Darjeeling.
If you watch the DVD of Darjeeling, when you get the menu to watch the movie, you have the option of watching the movie or watching the short leading into the movie, and it's like, don't do that. Do not do that, because I can easily imagine people who are not familiar with his work watching the short and just going, yeah, and I'm out. not even starting to film. And the film is a lot more accessible than that short is. The short is dry and long, and as far as I'm concerned, pointless. And then the movie starts a little more calmly and walks you into a story. So, anyway.
Yeah, in a similar vein, though, I do. One must never watch The Meaning of Life without watching The Crimson Permanent Assurance leading into it.
But how could you not?
I think there's some people who skip it because it's like, oh, well, there will be a short film before our feature presentation. I remember seeing that movie in the theater and having people walk out because it's like, oh, I don't want to watch a short film. You know,
right.
I'll go to the toilet. I'll go get more popcorn.
But am I mistaken, or doesn't that have a callback?
It does.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's part of the film.
Yeah, that's what I
But
thought.
yeah, don't make the mistake of not seeing.
Admittedly, though, it is not the tone of the movie.
No, it was originally supposed to be a middle segment of the film, and they realized it's like too much of this Gilliam world that removes, it just derails the entire film. So they bodily ripped it out of the main feature, stuck it on as a short film at the beginning, and then did that one callback scene to it, where the supporting film tries to take over the feature film.
Well, I just want to touch on this for 2 seconds. I don't want to get deeply into it.
No.
Speaking of abandoned fathers, I feel like Terry Gilliam is the father that abandoned me cinematically. When you look at his early work, you're like, oh my god, this is so wonderfully quirky and brilliantly directed. And you've got his 3 key movies he made in
the Dreamer trilogy, yeah.
And then, so we're talking about Time Bandits, Brazil, and Baron Munchausen, all of which have so much to offer in repeat viewings and genius performances and great writing, great filmmaking. And all's good. Then he had his massive failure of Baron Munchausen and was relegated to...
Even though it's fantastic.
Yeah, we don't trust you with any money.
Right.
So he made a super low-budget film for him, which was The Fisher King.
Right.
Which, despite not being an official Terry Gilliam movie, since he didn't write it, and only kind of cursorily touching on his themes, is my favorite of his work. Now, I don't mean to downplay the work he's written, which is genius. It's probably more... It's interesting to say this. I think his movies like Brazil are just works of genius, whereas Fisher King's just a nice movie, but it's still my favorite of them. I just have a lot more attachment to it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with Williams not being around anymore and everything about it.
Well, the mention of Robin Williams and The Fisher King leads me to one of the dad films that I feel we have to discuss. I don't know if it's on theme for abandonment, because it's sort of a father who sticks with his son post-mortem.
Of course,
which
you're
is
talking about Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yes, of course. Greatest abandoning dad drag whatever film. Oh God, what a wretched. That was part of Williams' bad period, as far as I'm concerned. That's one of the.
It's one of his most beloved movies.
Yeah, and everyone who beloves that can go straight to hell.
And what's most important to understand is it is part of the James Bond canon.
Yeah.
So what is the?
I was going to say we should talk about probably one of Robin Williams' very best films and one of the most forgotten, which is World's Greatest Dad.
Oh wow. That's interesting. I mean, it's not exactly an abandoned father movie because...
Yeah, no, it's not. But I
trying.
feel compelled to mention that film because it is a dad-themed film and it's fantastic.
It is a masterpiece. It is. It does have that almost sitcom-like plot point of, I'm gonna just do this thing that's a complete lie and we're just gonna quietly wait for me to be found out.
Yeah.
Which I don't love, but it's in that movie. It's entirely forgivable considering how good that movie is. And
yeah, it's not him who abandons his son so much as the son who abandons him through autoerotic asphyxiation.
Well, also he's a monster.
And his son is a monster. Yes,
his son is only terrible.
Mm-hmm.
It is quite an amazing performance.
And it is about him honoring his memory and building him up to be someone he never was. And it's a great film about lying your ass off.
It is definitely abandonment in a certain sense. It's certainly that entire movie is Williams trying to make up for his failures as a father.
Yes,
despite the fact that he's probably just a great dad. He is. He's not a bad person.
No.
None of the things
his son is just exceptionally poor.
Yeah. Well, his kid is practically a sociopath in that movie. He's just a wretched creature.
It is, he's up there with, this isn't a bad dad film, it's a bad mom film. We need to talk about Kevin. He's almost as bad as that kid.
Oh, I thought you were going to say she's a bad mom.
She is a bad mom, but the kid in we need to talk about Kevin is yes. Almost on a level with the kid in World's Greatest Dad. Yeah, as far as, like, just horrible. Oh my God, what have I given birth to?
And if Tess was here today, she would go on a rant about having been friends with the kid in that movie when they were in high school together.
What, Ezra Miller?
You haven't heard her Ezra Miller rant?
No, I have not.
Well, no. Well, stay tuned for a future episode where Shane gets schooled.
Oh well, hey, we should do a whole episode if she's, especially if she's got great bad Ezra Miller stories, because
I have a feeling
I'm not fond of him.
They're just along the lines of, I knew him in high school, he's a dick.
Okay, yeah.
Or perhaps he's fine, but she just doesn't care. I don't remember. But yeah, she's got opinions. You may have met Tess. She's got opinions.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Never noticed.
It'll be an enlightening interview for you. By the way,
they wouldn't happen to be darkly cynical opinions, would they?
They might touch on it. I did start off that chunk right before the Williams comment by saying that Terry Gilliam abandoned me the way a father abandons his children when, as far as I'm concerned, everything after The Fisher King, and the next movie after The Fisher King is 12 Monkeys, which a lot of people like. I do not like it. I don't think it's poorly made, but I don't like it. But
you just think it's an affront to la jetée.
That's right. But it is a very swift spiral downward from that point on, and the rest of his career seems to me to be can I really be this high on a movie set and get away with it series of films, because there's nothing he made after that even makes sense. The rest of it's work.
I'm pretty okay with Tideland.
You sir are a cinematic monster.
Tideland, I think, is actually kind of an uncredited fourth part of his Dreamers trilogy.
I think that it is a way of crapping on the Dreamers trilogy. Yes. It is an incredibly hard movie to sit through, and not for the usual. It is.
It's Jeff Bridges starring in the third part of the Weekend at Bernie's trilogy.
Yeah, it is not a good movie. It is the prequel to the
Coming off the Brothers Grimm, I found it refreshing. So,
yeah.
you kind of take your Gilliam pleasures where you can get them these days.
At any rate, post those movies, they get worse. They get significantly worse, and when you finally arrive at the man who killed Don Quixote, you wish that Gilliam had somehow been the final casualty of that incredible film history of that movie failing again and again and again to get made. Because once you see the movie he made, you say, so I'm going to go ahead and assume that film had a script 15 years ago when he tried to make it, but by the time this version got made, they abandoned that script and just let Adam Driver ad-lib the entire movie. And 2.5 hours of watching Adam Driver ad-lib is the kind of thing that will drive you to suicide. It is a horrid, worthless film. Like,
Still looking forward to seeing it one day, if it's ever made available, generally.
It's been made available generally for about 8 months.
Yeah, well, on torrents, I guess.
No.
No?
It's out there. It's an iTunes, whatever.
Is it?
Yeah. It's
Because last I heard there was rights issues, yet again.
Oh, I don't doubt it, but it's out there. Full copies of the movie are made available for purchase someplace. But just be glad that you haven't had to waste it. It's an old cliche. 2.5 hours of your life you will never get back.
Well, considering I've seen everything else Gilliam's done, and I'm one of those people who owns a rare original edition of Animations of Mortality, so...
If you have so much faith in your beloved directors, how come you weren't sitting next to me at Dumbo?
I think we've all agreed that abandoning Tim Burton at this point is probably a prudent move.
There is still a glimmer of hope that Tim Burton will make a watchable movie again. I have no such feelings towards Terry Gilliam. Not even the tiniest spark of hope. I really don't believe Tim Burton will ever make another good movie because he crossed that line of, well, the CGI people could fix that, and that's all his career is now. But if he ever just has a burning desire to tell another honest story or another...
I am still fingers crossed for that sequel to Ed Wood that does the later years, the really sad, depressing, horrible, him and his wife just clawing at each other in a crappy apartment while he writes dime store garbage for pennies per word.
I would watch that movie.
Oh, absolutely.
I
Especially if you got Johnny Depp again. Johnny Depp today, it's as burned out old Ed Wood. Waiting to die of a heart attack during a football game. That's
You're listening to CHLO 1690, and today we are counting down the absent father movies that we have enjoyed or scratched our heads over. I'm going to move on to another film. I just want to definitely get a chance to mention this one because by today's standards, it's a pretty unknown movie. It's a 1986 movie starring Christopher Walken and Sean Penn called At Close Range. It is a movie about Sean Penn and his brother have been raised by their single mother, and who I believe is played by Sean Penn's real mother in the movie. And it's his real brother playing his brother, so it's quite a family affair there. The dad is a criminal, a career criminal who's been absent their entire lives. And he comes back into the picture when Penn is about 16 years old and is himself a bit of a kid looking for a reason, kind of a bit of not a rebel, but a troublemaker. He's a troublemaker. The dad comes into the picture, and the dad makes no secret of the fact that, yeah, I have a gang, and we do crime. We rob people, we do things that are bad. And he basically invites Sean Penn to hang around this crew and kind of partake a little bit in the work, but not much. And Penn's genius idea is, why start my own gang? Gets all his 16-year-old friends together to make their own criminal gang. And when the Walken character sort of realizes, oh, my kid is robbing places, and he's gonna get caught, and they're gonna finger us, he just tells his crew, yeah, we just gotta kill all these kids now. We just gotta go and murder all of them. That's the fastest way to make sure we don't get nailed for anything they do wrong. That's
sounds efficient.
That's a synopsis, but it is a really amazing film about looking up to the dad that wasn't there. It's that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That whole I idealize my scumbag criminal dad. And don't worry, nothing bad will come from that. Anyway, At Close Range is a minor masterpiece. It's a very quiet, very dark movie. It features a brilliant early Crispin Glover performance. It's actually, I think it's the year after Back to the Future, but still, he's playing practically a child in this movie. And everything about the movie is great. The cinematography is stunning. And well, that's it. At Close Range. Really, really amazing little abandoning father film. We mentioned Spielberg earlier because, of course, it's a recurring theme in his movies. I guess that means his dad must have abandoned the family.
Yes.
And so, of course, we've got E.T.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty straight, there's the struggling single mom with the kids looking for meaning and finding it in a sock puppet.
The world's ugliest sock puppet.
Yeah, I am not a Carlos Rambaldi fan. What about you? No? He created E.T.
Yeah, well, he's no Yoda, put it that way.
Right. But a more obvious Spielberg abandoned father character, at least ultimately, is Indiana Jones, where the third film certainly makes a very underlined point of, you weren't the best dad. You weren't really around. Always. I think the point was he was always off.
You left just when you were getting interesting.
Oh, that was
the line, yeah.
But that is a rough father-son relationship.
Mm-hmm.
A little Disney-fied for my tastes by the end. Not the biggest fan of that movie.
Yeah, well, I'm not the biggest fan of the inconsistent characterizations of not just characters returning to the series in the third film, but also characters we're seeing for the first time, like the Sean Connery dad figure who, at one point, is horrified that his son has just machine gunned several Nazis to death, and then literally 5 minutes later in their lives, he kills someone else in an even more horrific way, to which dad responds by winding his watch and being rather indifferent to it.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, wow, you got desensitized to violence really quick there.
But to be fair, given most of Spielberg's output since then, boy, would I love another one of those movies at that level.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. I have to agree.
They've been threatening us with another Indiana Jones movie for a decade now, and every year Harrison Ford gets creepier and tinier, more shriveled up, and they just keep saying, "Oh, we're gonna get another one out of him." It's like, are you really gonna make him work out again? And
hip displacer by Jake.
Wow, I get that reference. That is a deep cut, sir. I would be perfectly happy if they made an academic Indiana Jones movie at this point. With a little intrigue thrown in, but I don't want to see him cast his whip onto the limb of a tree and swing across a chasm. That would just make me feel bad for everyone.
All I want to find out is how the hell he lost his eye. If you remember those segments from the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, it's going to turn out, it was just botched LASIK surgery. It wasn't anything interesting. He didn't get a machete to the face or anything.
It's just a fashion choice. Fingers crossed they get that actor to come back. 100-year-old at the time actor.
Yeah, I'm sure he's available. Actually, Sean Patrick Flannery could probably play 93-year-old Indiana Jones at this point. He's leathery enough.
At this point, Sean Patrick Flannery looks older than Harrison Ford. That's quite the trick.
That's hard but true.
Let's jump ahead. I want to mention this one as well because it's a movie that definitely fell between the cracks for most people. After Mel Gibson had his massive fall from grace, he took a breather and then came back and made a couple of movies and had another massive fall from grace. And unfortunately, I guess...
Isn't he due for another massive fall from grace now?
Yes, he really is. It'd be the perfect trilogy for him. But in the middle of two of these massive falls of grace, he made a film that's kind of great. It is an abandoned father movie, an absent father movie called Bloodfather. And Bloodfather is just a movie about a career criminal. You'll notice a lot of criminal films are abandoned or absent father stories. Almost any film noir, if they ever mention their families, it's always no dad. There's always no dad.
Yeah, well, it is one of the, statistically, one of the most predictive things for criminal behavior.
Right. But Bloodfather is Mel Gibson coming back into his daughter's life because she has a problem that he needs to help her solve. And she's mad at him because he wasn't ever there, and now he's basically shows up while she is in the middle of her own crime story, and he's the criminal dad who can hopefully get her out of it. And it's kind of a great little... I use this expression a lot lately. It's a pretty disposable movie, but it's good. It's just a solid little thriller. There's a lot of humor in it, in the way that the Mel Gibson character kind of walks into the situation and goes, "Please tell me you didn't get into bed with these idiot criminals." And she kind of shrugs like, and he just has this like, "Oh, for God's sake." There's a lot of that. A lot of him just... There's an amazing moment in this film where he goes to get her, I think, in essentially like a camper van or trailer park or something. And he goes to collect her from this building, and people show up and just start shooting at them. And he's standing there in a house just sighing and shrugging his shoulders like, "This is my life! In a trailer, getting shot at by worthless criminals." It's a great
Because
scene.
of my disappointing daughter.
Yeah, that's basically it. But Bloodfather, great little movie. And if you hate Mel Gibson, you should probably avoid it. But if you're still like, I wish he'd made at least one more great movie. He did. That was his last great acting piece, where he's just fun. It's true.
Are you forgetting Dragged Across Concrete,
true
sir?
That he's kind of had he's had a pretty amazing renaissance with that relationship. I hope he can...
Oh yeah, no, if he becomes one of the stable of actors for Craig Zoller, I'll be very happy.
I mean, even if he just takes over the Don Johnson part of the 2-minute captain yelling at his men, I'm all in.
He could be he could be Craig Zoller's new Udo Kier.
There's enough history there to make that creepy thing work.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk some more about some absent father movies. I guess a pretty good example would be World According to Garp. Where the father is essentially non-existent.
Well,
the product of...
Glenn Close and some other... basically, the story she tells sounds kind of like her raping the sperm out of the guy.
There's a shell-shocked soldier who has essentially no brain left.
Yeah, he's like completely bandaged up or something, right?
And she, as a nurse, is caring for him and decides she wants to get pregnant, so she mounts him.
Mm-hmm.
To which he says, this is really going back, but I think he was completely non-responsive the entire time he was in the hospital. Never said a single word. And during the sexual encounter, she clearly heard him mutter the word "good."
Mm-hmm.
This one communication. Good.
Which was just part of the sentence, "Good God, woman, get off me."
Quite possibly. I mentioned earlier Fight Club, and I read a quote from that. I'm gonna do that again now. Here's another quote from Chuck Palahniuk that was from a novel that was made into a movie. And I happen to own a copy of this book, and I just randomly opened it yesterday while researching this. Not at all on the subject of thinking about abandoned fathers in this case, and stumbled on this quote, which may be the single most perfect imaginable quote for this sort of thing. And here's a quote from Chuck Palahniuk's Choke. "The truth is, every son raised by a single mom is pretty much born married. I don't know, but until your mom dies, it seems like all the other women in your life can never be more than just your mistresses." Now that's psychological damage.
That book is rather chock full of psychological damage.
Yeah, Choke is kind of amazing.
I wish that the film they made of it lived up to the book.
It needed to be an hour longer. A literal hour longer. That's how... So many of the sequences in the movie Choke are just these blip versions of the scene from the book.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, we want to touch on this scene. So they literally just touch on it and move on. And it's like, no. If the same movie had been shot by David Fincher, or paced out by him, it would have been a 2-hour and 55-minute film.
Yeah, and it also would have cost an extra $100 million.
I think that's fine.
No, I think so too. I mean, Choke certainly would have benefited from more money.
Yeah, it's too fast, and too low budget, and something about it. The tone is just a little too bouncy.
You actually needed money to shoot some of the more disturbing elements of the book.
I mean, I think it's just a matter of have a little more faith in the source material. Don't try to truncate it so much. The guy who did the adaptation really chopped it into a tiny, pretty much disposable version. So
Well, fingers crossed for one day a nice big budget version of Survivor where we get to see the porn desert.
the only way you'll ever see that is as a television-based series. And frankly, you couldn't adapt that book anymore properly. You couldn't do it properly because no one is going to adapt the first 40 pages of that book now.
Mm-hmm.
It's about a sexual predator, and you're supposed to root for this guy. And there's horrible stuff in that. You don't remember this, do you?
No, I don't remember that part. It's been many years since I've read it.
He mentions a lot of stuff that he'd love to do, and it's real creepy. It's real, unlikably creepy stuff. And if you cut that out, you're kind of cutting out the heart of it. And once you get into the cult stuff in Survivor, if you don't have that, what was he doing while he was just wandering around cleaning houses? Well, he had other hobbies. It's how he meets the girl. He, in case you don't remember this, I'll just mention this plot point. He's got stickers that he's printed up that say, need help feeling alone? Essentially it says, thinking about killing yourself? Why not call this number instead? And he puts his home phone number on it.
Uh-huh.
And he says the only reason that he wrote that is because he wanted to write, are you a cute girl? Can I take advantage of you? Call this number. He says, but if you write that, you'll get a police visit. At any rate, yeah, so he gets a lot of photos at the beginning from damaged people who he manipulates.
Mm-hmm.
It's super creepy.
Yeah, well, Chuck Palahniuk does excel at creepy stuff, and Choke, the book, specifically is, I believe, the reason we have self-sealing envelopes at the bank now.
Agreed. Look it up. Look it up, kids.
Yeah.
Read that book.
Look it up and be horrified, and be grateful we now have self-adhesive bank envelopes.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of movie recommendations on this show, but I'll say, let's recommend that book wholeheartedly. The book Choke is... It's not a really, really long book, but it has a lot of content.
Yeah. It also has what I consider to be Chuck Palahniuk's single best chapter.
Yeah, I know what chapter that is.
Oh, yeah.
We're not going to get into it.
No, we will not.
But I will go ahead and say, Choke, consider everything about the book a trigger warning.
Yeah.
It in no way is a PC book. It is very, very well written, very clever, but it's going to mess with your head, much like these commercials are about to.
Did they move the drums?
You mean
Sounds like they're coming from a different direction.
No, they're right there.
Okay.
In my guesswork. As usual, I've got like 50 other movies I could mention that we won't get to. Go off on our tangents. It's pretty funny. I'm glad I got to mention my Mel Gibson movie though.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I have a whole bunch to touch on as just, these fit that. We don't have to go too deep into them. Just like this one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was much.
Was that?
I was just gonna say, it's like this is a really long ad, and I was like, wow, did I choose a full 1 minute ad to play? It's like, no, that's the programmed one. I chose a 20-second ad.
Mm-hmm.
I like the fact that I never play movie ads anymore. It's like, we don't need to. It feels weirdly repetitive.
Well, they're the competition.
There you go. And we're back on 1690 CJLO. Our show is called Cinema Smackdown, and today we're counting down the hits. By hits, I mean the hits that dads deliver to their children right before walking out the door. In certain movies.
I thought we were counting down the non sequiturs that had nothing to do with our topic on hand.
Nope, those hits. The smacks in the face that the dads delivered. They said goodbye to their children forever. Lovely movies like that. So let's see. I've got a giant list. Here's an interesting thing. I'll mention a bunch of these together because, well, they all sort of fit together as one kind of movie, which is to say, abandoned or definitely weird dad stuff. Where did I put that list? So here we've got, let's go with Psycho. Psycho's a pretty good example.
There's
of
certainly
what
an absent dad.
when there's an absent dad.
That young man could have used some guidance.
He could have used some guidance. Then we've got Friday the 13th, which is another one where it's a real son and mother relationship happening.
Yeah, are you sure this isn't like bad single moms?
Well, here's an example that really falls a little outside what we've been talking about, but when you know the origin of the dad, it's kind of horrifying. The Nightmare on Elm Street series. Do you remember Freddy's origin?
Oh, yeah, the
bastard son of a
thousand maniacs, yes.
Yeah. So that's kind of awful. That's definitely going to mess with your head if your mom is ever dumb enough to tell you that story. You just like, oh, he was some guy I met in a bar. It's probably a good.
Really, Mom? 1,000? You counted. I would have lost track.
I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've seen that movie, but it might be 100.
Yeah. No, I think it was 1,000. Well, or are we confusing it with the Herschel
title.
Gordon Lewis title?
That's why I say it.
Yeah.
At any rate, Freddy Krueger is definitely the product of bad upbringing, bad genes.
You know, technically, only one of them could have made it through to that egg.
That's not the argument they make in the movie Twins. Do you remember that?
No.
In the movie Twins, they explain how this experiment using some kind of genius woman decided that she wanted the best of different attributes of these amazing men, so she had a sperm cocktail made of all of these other geniuses and had it mixed together in some kind of milkshake making machine. And the Danny DeVito result is the bad stuff left on the side.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I think he has some horrifying comment about
The factory floor sweepings of sperm that created Danny DeVito.
Imagine building a whole career about being that gross. At any rate, yeah, horror movies have a lot of abandoned dad or absent dad stuff. So we've got Fright Night, which is a movie about a kid living with a single mom, and there's dad issues in that one. Certainly relationship issues and dad issues, and the mom is looking for comfort in the arms of the mysterious vampire stranger who moved in next door.
Well, we should all be so lucky as to get a surrogate dad in the form of Roddy McDowall as a horror show host.
Or David Tennant in the remake. Ew.
Oh, dear.
I like David Tennant, but no. And there's The Lost Boys, where that's very much an entire, even the whole Peter Pan structure. We can bring in the movie Hook in that case. It's all about children. Well, it's basically both parents in that case. But the movie The Lost Boys is about the single mom raising her kids who go looking for meaning and find it in a vampire cult.
Mm-hmm.
But there's certainly themes in that one that, there is.
If only there's enough Corys to save us.
Oh no! Oh dear. There's the single mom aspect of The Exorcist. I do not recall at all. Do they mention the dad in that movie?
I think in passing, yeah. I think there.
Too vague for me.
Isn't there a phone call at some point about? Anyway, I don't.
I'll see you at Christmas, baby. One of those.
Could be. And it's like, I would think that was probably a smart move on his part. You don't want the spider walking child to you don't want to hang out for that kid.
You don't want him. You want him to mess up your new conquests. Yeah, her to mess up his new conquests. And then of course there's a much more recent film that
you could say the Father God abandoned her.
There you go. There's a more recent horror movie that has that. Certainly, the single mom aspect is taken quite seriously. Is The Babadook?
Oh yeah.
As you may recall, I seem to remember you being a fan of that movie. While I found it intolerable in every possible way. But it's a well.
You are in the minority in that.
It is a well-liked movie that I thought was not worth my time, even as a short film, and yet people seem to be intrigued by it.
But again, this is another unfit single mom movie.
Yes. But might not have hurt if Dad had been around.
Oh yeah, certainly. You need someone to help keep that lady from going completely crazy with her pop-up books.
Right, exactly. So yeah, we do have a few of those. A pretty good abandoned absent dad movie would be Boondock Saints. That definitely falls into
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And that is the arc of the whole
But there is a
movie.
reconciliation. That,
I mean, there's a reconciliation in Bloodfather.
yeah.
There's...
It's nice when the dad finally steps up and does a good job, decades too late.
Mm-hmm. There's a pretty extreme... I'm not sure if you've seen this movie. There's a pretty extreme absent father storyline in What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Yeah, I have seen that. I'm not...
The mother
don't really
was
recall
a beauty
what.
queen whose husband hung himself in the other room, and then she just ate her feelings until she was about 800 pounds. And
Right.
And of course, the whole family is basically destroyed by this. I don't recall if the dad killed himself for any particular reason, or they have an autistic child. Might have had something to do with that. I don't remember. But it's not good news in that particular case. The way the dad abandons that family it is family destroying, and everybody in that little circle of kids is pretty messed up in that movie. It's a great movie though. It is quite literally the last time I looked forward to Leonardo DiCaprio having a career, and it was around '94.
If only he had continued to play autistics.
He's doing that De Niro thing of I'm really method acting this character out, and it works in that movie. Didn't work so
Well,
great.
he's doing that De Niro thing in that he's stealing all of the Scorsese gigs.
Right, yeah, eventually. But I do not like a single film he made after that. I went to see Titanic thinking, it's that great actor, Leonardo DiCaprio! Wow, is this bad? And then it turned out that Titanic was his last great role, so comparatively. I am not a fan of his...
He was excellent as a flotation device.
Sure. I am not a fan of his Scorsese movies whatsoever. I mean, some of the work he's done in the last 20 years has been watchable, but not because of him. I will...
We'll be out to theater again to see him this July,
in
so...
a couple weeks, you and I are unfortunately stuck with him. But I'm very vaguely not interested in that movie. I'm hoping to be wrong and that it turns out great, but a quasi-true story Manson movie starring DiCaprio sounds really boring. So
I don't know, I'm sold on that turtleneck. DiCaprio in a turtleneck sounds hot.
You're all in.
Yep. That's a box office winner right there.
Here's a couple more absent father movies. We've got The Iron Giant, as well as Toy Story, 2 cartoon films that the children in them are clearly affected by this missing parental figure, and that's what drives Andy insane and makes him think that his toys are alive.
I'm pretty sure the uncredited father in Toy Story is Mr. Potato Head.
Ah, that's sexy.
Yeah. That smooth talking Don Rickles will get you into bed every time.
Oh yeah, he definitely keeps it going. There is another absent father movie, which is kind of interesting looking at it from that angle, is The Karate Kid. So you've got the single mom raising her kind of charming upstart kid who they move to the new neighborhood and he gets picked on by bullies, and then he finds his father figure in Mr. Miyagi, and that goes from there and triumphs over his enemies. Worth mentioning for the 30-something year later television sequel called Cobra Kai, which is so good I can't believe it.
Yeah, everyone can't believe how good that actually ended up being.
Well,
because I really want to see a TV show that would continue from the new Karate Kid.
Are you talking about
the Hilary Swank?
The Hilary Swank,
yeah.
Or the Jaden Smith one?
Well, both. They could have mixed and matched both.
I think that now they'd be an awesome screen couple.
Yeah.
Put them together.
You can't really book Pat Morita being something anymore, but Jackie Chan will do.
He'll do an
He doesn't have necessarily
he
doesn't necessarily have high standards for what he'll be in. So.
But what a karate master he is.
Yes, completely wrong martial art, but okay, fine.
At any rate, the Cobra Kai show amazingly follows the bully from the original Karate Kid movie named Johnny. Sweep the leg, Johnny! It's that guy. And it shows how 1 or 2 defeats in your youth can really color your entire life and make you grow up bitter and a complete loser. And he himself is now the absent father in his own family. He abandoned his family at a certain point. So that relationship is part of the Cobra Kai story. And it's I wouldn't quite call it a road to redemption story because Johnny is still an awful, awful person. And that's the real charm of the show is he does learn the occasional lesson, but you watch the next episode and you're like, yeah, he's still pretty terrible. He's still a pretty terrible person. And I really root for him for that reason. He's not that he's incorrigible, but he's real slow to pick up on those big cues. And yeah, he's a great, almost an anti-hero. He really is a charming. It's also kind of amazing to see this actor, who's William Zabka. His name almost escaped me, but come on, how could you forget William Zabka? It's a great thing to pick up on an actor's career who hasn't worked in 2 decades. This guy has been nowhere because he was a bully in 5 major motion pictures in the early 80s. He was in Back to School, he was in Just One of the Guys, he was in Karate Kid. He played the same guy in all those movies. The kind of good-looking blonde guy who's a little too mean to everybody.
Oh, I remember in, Back to School, didn't he sweep the leg of Rodney Dangerfield?
If only. Rodney needed his leg swept a little earlier in his career, I'd say. Before Ladybugs, at any rate. It would have been a good time to give pause to those thoughts.
Well, hey, fingers crossed for the next season of Cobra Kai when they'll reintroduce Jaden Smith as a major character who will take over the show like a Fonzie.
Yeah. Actually, the Karate Kid, this show, Cobra Kai, kind of exists in the way that the John Wick universe exists. It exists in a world where people can have these crazy karate fights in the street. Or, as we've seen in the season finale of Season 2, a high school with a 30 or 50 person karate fight in which everyone gets round kicks to the head but are kind of okay after. There's this sort of charming, we're all really fighting hard but no one's really getting hurt here and we all know it's all in good fun.
Oh, so sort of like Captain America Civil War. Are we really fighting here for real?
Yeah, oh God, that's awful. Talk about a no-stakes movie. Well, we're about out of time. This has been our special Father's Day episode where we counted down the hits of...
and blathered on about completely unrelated stuff.
Well, that's what we do. But,
it is what we do.
We did touch on a number of father-related movies, including a bunch of Wes Anderson films and a lot of Spielberg movies.
Hey, we didn't even get into Son of Godzilla. I mean, that's my favorite dad film of all time.
When are we going to get a Son of Godzilla versus a Son of Kong movie? The whole movie could just be belly aching.
You know, if they continue to beat that monster universe to death, you never know.
As I understand it, they have effectively beaten it to death recently.
That was quick.
At any rate, happy Father's Day. I'm Michael Brody. I've been joined today by...
Oh, me, Shane Simmons.
And this show is Cinema Smackdown, and we will see you next time. Ugh, that was the show, all right. It was fun. I liked some of what we chatted about. Ugh.
Ollie will message Sylvia and say,
"You suck.
Worst show ever! Your fault! Where were you?"
I saw a woman on the bus on the way here. She had a Rick and Morty t-shirt.
Yeah.
And I was really struck by a Rick and Morty shirt. Just top of my head thing. And then she got off where I got off, and I was like, wait, is this Shane's friend? Did she actually show up? just that,
Yeah.
Could have been, Yeah, maybe she...
No, I would have texted you to let you know if
wouldn't have changed anything.
it's going to happen.
I mean, I did a little tiny bit of research, and we...
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, she would have just come in and it would have been a different show, and we would have done this next week.
Well.
Our usual original thing with Tess, which was always, hey, we're doing a Christmas episode, or a New Year's one, or whatever.
Right,
she would
right.
always then bail that week, and we would do it the week after. And I was just like, yeah, now that it's no longer relevant, happy St. Patty's. That kind of shit.